Kang Do-hyun was fixing a broken radio when the sky turned dark. He looked up from his desk in the small emergency center and saw something that made his blood run cold. Ships. Dozens of them. They blocked the sun like massive black clouds, and they were coming down fast. The colony of New Bizen had never seen war. It was a farming world, far from the busy centers of human space. People came here to grow rice and vegetables. They came here for peace. They had no weapons. They had no soldiers. They had nothing but their simple lives. Do-hyun was 34 years old. He worked in the emergency response center, helping people when accidents happened. A fire in a barn. A child lost in the fields. A farmer hurt by machinery. He was good at staying calm when others panicked. His coworkers said he had ice in his veins. But today, watching those alien ships descend, even his hands began to shake. The first explosions came from the eastern farms. Do-hyun grabbed his emergency bag and ran outside. People were screaming, running, falling. Strange creatures in black armor walked through the streets, firing weapons that made no sound but left people frozen on the ground. Do-hyun knew he should run. Every part of his brain screamed at him to hide. But he saw old Mrs. Kwan lying in the street, unable to move. He ran to her, grabbed her arm, and pulled her behind a water tank. Her eyes were wide with terror, but she was alive. "Stay here," he whispered. "Don't move. Don't make any sound." He moved through the chaos, helping where he could. He pulled a young boy from a burning building. He carried an injured woman to shelter. He did what he had always done. He helped people survive, but there were too many aliens. Too many weapons. Too much death. By sunset, it was over. The aliens had gathered all the survivors in the main square. Do-hyun counted maybe 200 people. 200 out of a colony of 3,000. His stomach turned. The aliens were tall. Taller than any human. Their skin was pale gray, and their eyes were completely black. They moved with a strange grace, like predators who had never known fear. They called themselves the Vectari, and they spoke through devices that translated their harsh language into human words. A Beyonce, large Vectari walked to the front of the gathered humans. His armor was different from the others. Gold markings covered his chest and shoulders. He looked at the humans like a farmer might look at livestock. "I am Commander Rokul," the alien said. His translated voice was cold and empty. "You are now property of the Vectari Dominion. But do not worry. You will not be slaves. We have no need for slaves." He paused, and something like a smile crossed his gray face. "We have need for sport." The humans began to whisper. Sport? What did that mean? Do-hyun felt a terrible weight settle in his chest. He understood. He understood even before Rokul continued speaking. "Humans are special," Rokul said. "In all the galaxy, no species runs like you do. No species hides like you do. No species fights back with such desperate fury. You are the perfect prey, and we are the perfect hunters." A woman near Do-hyun began to cry. A man tried to run and was immediately shot down. His body hit the ground with a soft thump. No one else moved. "You will be taken to Velkara," Rokul continued. "Our hunting moon. There, you will run. You will hide. You will try to survive. And we will hunt you. This is your purpose now. This is your only purpose." The aliens began separating the humans into groups. Do-hyun was pushed and pulled until he stood with about 40 others. He recognized some faces. Park Jun-ho, a young engineer who had arrived on the colony just last month. Lee So-young, a medic with gentle hands and sad eyes. Others he had seen, but never spoken to. A smaller alien approached their group. His movements were quick and excited, like a child on a holiday. This one wore red markings on his armor. "I am Overseer Thrall," he said. "I manage the hunts." I decide who runs first. I decide who lives longest. And I decide who dies quickly. He walked along the line of humans, looking at each one carefully. When he reached Do-hyun, he stopped. He pulled out a small device and scanned Do-hyun's body. Then he made a sound that might have been a laugh. "This one," Frel said. "No combat training. No military history. No threat markers at all. Just a simple emergency worker." He leaned close to Do-hyun's face. "You are perfect. Absolutely perfect." Frel placed a red tag on Do-hyun's chest. "First wave," the overseer announced. "You will be released first. You are the warm-up. The easy kills. The ones who teach our young hunters how to track and shoot." Do-hyun said nothing. His face showed nothing. Inside, his mind was racing. First wave meant he would die first. First wave meant he was already dead in their eyes. But Do-hyun had spent his whole life in emergency situations. He had learned one important truth. Panic killed more people than any disaster. The ones who survived were the ones who stayed calm, the ones who thought clearly, the ones who waited for the right moment. He was not a soldier. He was not a fighter. He was just a man who helped people survive. And right now, the person who needed to survive was himself. The aliens loaded them onto transport ships. The inside was dark and cold, like the belly of some great metal beast. Do-hyun sat between Junho and So-young. No one spoke. What was there to say? But in that darkness, Do-hyun made a quiet promise to himself. He would not die easily. He would not give them the quick kill they expected. He would watch. He would learn. He would find their weaknesses. And somehow, someway, he would survive. The ship engines roared to life, and New Bizen disappeared below them. Do-hyun looked out a small window and saw his home, growing smaller and smaller until it was just a dot of light among the stars. Then even that was gone. Somewhere ahead, a hunting moon waited for them. Somewhere ahead, alien hunters prepared their weapons and celebrated their new prey. They thought humans were weak. They thought humans were easy. Kang Do-hyun closed his eyes and began the plan. They would learn how wrong they were. The hunting moon was beautiful. That was the worst part. Green jungles stretched across valleys. Snow-covered mountains rose in the distance. Rivers cut through fields of tall grass. It looked like paradise. But Do-hyun knew the truth. Every tree could hide a killer. Every shadow could hold death, Valkara. The Vektari had built this place over hundreds of years. They had created different zones for different kinds of hunts. Jungle, tundra, desert, ruined cities. Each one designed to test their prey in new ways. Each one soaked in the blood of countless species. The prisoners received their orientation in a massive stone building. An older human stood at the front. His body was covered in scars, and his eyes held no hope. He was a trustee, a survivor who had earned the right to live by serving the Vektari. "Listen carefully," the scarred man said, "because I will only say this once. When the hunt begins, you run. You hide. You survive as long as you can. The longest any human has lasted is 11 days. Most die in the first hour." Junho leaned close to Do-hyun. "This is insane. This cannot be real." But it was real. The scarred man explained the rules. No weapons were given to the prey. The hunters would use tracking drones and heat sensors. The jungle zone was for beginners. The city ruins were for advanced hunters. Death was certain. The only question was how long you could delay it. "First wave launches tomorrow," the man finished. "May your deaths be quick." That night, Do-hyun did not sleep. He sat in his cell and thought about everything he knew. He was not strong. He was not fast. He could not fight a Vektari and win. But he had other skills. In emergency response, he had learned to read situations, to notice small details, to find solutions that others missed. The Vektari saw humans as prey. That meant they expected humans to act like prey, to run blindly, to hide poorly, to make noise and leave trails. What if he did none of those things? Morning came too quickly. The first wave prisoners were loaded onto small transport vehicles and driven to the edge of the jungle zone. Do-hyun counted 15 people, 15 lives, 15 targets. Overseer Thrall appeared on a floating platform above them. His voice boomed across the clearing. The hunt begins now. You have a 1-hour head start. Use it well, or it makes no difference to us. The gates opened. People ran. They scattered in every direction, crashing through bushes and splashing through streams. Do-hyun did not run. He walked, slowly, carefully. He studied the ground, the trees, the direction of the wind. The others thought he was frozen with fear. One woman grabbed his arm and tried to pull him along. "Move! They're coming!" "Running leaves trails," Do-hyun said calmly. "Noise attracts attention. I need to think." The woman stared at him like he was crazy. Then she ran, leaving him alone. Do-hyun spent his head start observing. He noticed that the hunting drones made a soft humming sound. He noticed that certain plants had thick, waxy leaves that blocked heat signatures. He noticed a series of thermal vents near a muddy riverbank, steam rising from the ground. When the hour ended, he heard the sounds of the hunt beginning. Weapons fired in the distance. Screams echoed through the jungle. The Vektari hunters had arrived. Do-hyun moved to the thermal vents. The steam was hot but not burning. More importantly, it would confuse heat sensors. He found a spot where warm mud pooled between two large rocks. Then he did something that went against every human instinct. He covered himself completely in mud and stopped moving. He lay there, breathing through a hollow reed he had found earlier. The mud was thick and heavy. Insects crawled over his body. The heat from the vents made sweat pour down his face. But he did not move. Not a twitch. Not a flinch. Hours passed. He heard hunters walk within 10 meters of his position. He heard drones buzz overhead. He heard the death cries of other first-wave prisoners. Still, he did not move. Day turned to night. Night turned to day. Do-hyun had trained his body for this during search and rescue operations. Sometimes finding survivors meant waiting in uncomfortable positions for hours. Sometimes it meant ignoring pain and discomfort. He had once spent 9 hours trapped under collapsed building rubble, waiting for rescue, keeping himself calm through breathing exercises. This was the same. Just longer. Much longer. On the second day, the hunters became confused. Their tracking system showed 14 kills from first wave, but there should have been 15. One target was missing. Overseer Thrall reviewed the data personally. "Find the 15th human," he ordered. "Search the entire zone." They searched. They used better drones. They brought animals that could smell human sweat. But Do-hyun had prepared for this too. He had rubbed certain plants on his skin that masked his scent. He had learned about these plants during survival training years ago. Day 3. Day 4. Day 5. The news spread through the prisoner compound. One of the first wave was still alive. The quiet man with no combat training. The emergency worker from New Bizon. He was still out there. So Young heard the news and smiled. For the first time since her capture. "That clever fool," she whispered. He actually listened during those survival seminars. Thrall was no longer amused. He was angry. This human was making him look incompetent. He assigned his best hunters, the elite trackers who had never failed to find their prey. They searched for 3 more days. They found nothing. On day 9, Do-hyun finally moved from his hiding spot. Not because he had to, but because he had learned enough. He had watched the patrol patterns. He had memorized the drone schedules. He understood how the hunters communicated. He began to move through the jungle like a ghost, never running, always walking slowly and carefully, stopping whenever danger approached, using every shadow, every bush, every terrain feature to stay invisible. On day 12, he found another survivor, a young man named Kim Tae-woo, hiding in a cave and slowly dying of thirst. Do-hyun gave him water and showed him how to hide properly. On day 15, he saved 2 more survivors from a hunter patrol. He led them to a safe zone he had discovered, an area where natural mineral deposits interfered with Vectari tracking technology. Overseer Threll received the reports with growing fury. The human was not just surviving. He was helping others survive. He was turning prey into something else. "Bring me the Bloodsworn," Threll commanded. "It is time to end this." The Bloodsworn were Vectari elite hunters. They had never failed a hunt. They were sent only for the most dangerous prey. They had never hunted anything like Kang Do-hai and Dot in the jungle. Do-hyun did not know about the Bloodsworn. He only knew that he had survived 16 days. He only knew that he had kept others alive. And he only knew that somewhere on this moon, there had to be a way to escape. He looked up at the stars and thought about home. Then he went back to work, watching, learning, surviving. The hunt was far from over. The second transport ship arrived at Volcara carrying 43 new prisoners. Among them was a woman who did not cry, a woman who did not shake with fear, a woman who sat perfectly still and watched everything with calm, cold eyes. Yoon Hana was 52 years old. Her hair was gray at the edges. Her face had lines that spoke of hard years. She looked like someone's grandmother. She looked harmless. She was neither. For 20 years. Hannah had served in places that did not exist on any official record. She had completed missions that governments denied ever happened. She had earned many nicknames in many languages. The one name followed her everywhere she went: the Silent Reaper. They called her this because her targets never heard her coming. They never saw her approach. They simply stopped living, and she was already gone. She had retired 5 years ago. She had wanted peace. She had wanted quiet mornings and simple meals and a small garden where she could grow vegetables. She had found all of these things on a diplomatic station near the border of human space. Then the Vectari came. On the transport ship, Hana did not struggle against her chains. She did not plan an escape. Not yet. First, she needed information. She needed to understand her enemy, their weapons, their weaknesses, their patterns. Only a fool attacked without proper intelligence. She watched the guards change shifts. She noted which ones were lazy and which ones were alert. She counted the seconds between patrol rounds. She studied the layout of the ship through the vibrations in the floor and the sounds echoing through the metal walls. By the time they reached Volcara, she had already mapped the entire vessel in her mind. The processing center was the same one Do-hyun had passed through weeks earlier. The same scarred trustee gave the same hopeless speech. Hana listened politely and filed away every piece of information. When they scanned her body for threat markers, the machines found nothing. She had no cybernetic enhancements, no hidden weapons, no genetic modifications. She was just an old woman who had been working as a diplomatic aide. The machines could not scan for 20 years of training. They could not detect muscle memory built through 10,000 hours of practice. They could not measure the killing instinct that lived behind her gentle eyes. Second wave, the processing officer announced. Moderate difficulty. Good for intermediate hunters. Hana nodded politely and allowed herself to be led away. The next morning, she was dropped into the urban ruin zone. Crumbling buildings stretched in every direction. Broken streets created a maze of concrete and shadow. It was designed to be confusing for prey. For Hannah, it was perfect. The hunters expected her to run. She walked instead. She walked into the nearest building and disappeared into the shadows. For the next 6 hours, she simply observed. She watched 3 different hunting parties pass through the area. She noted their formation, their communication methods, their blind spots. Then night fell, and the silent reaper went to work. The first hunter died without making a sound. He had separated from his partner to check a suspicious noise. Hannah came from behind. Her hands found the exact spot on his neck where pressure would cause instant unconsciousness. He fell. She took his weapon and his communication device. Then she dragged his body into a dark corner where it would not be found for hours. The second hunter came looking for the first. He found only empty shadows. Then he found nothing at all. By morning, 4 hunters were missing from the urban zone. Their tracking signals had simply stopped. No distress calls. No signs of struggle. They were just gone. Overseer Thrall received the report with confusion. Equipment failure? No, the devices were working perfectly. Desertion? Impossible. Vektari hunters live for the hunt. He sent more hunters. Better hunters. He told them to be careful. It did not help. On the second day, Hannah acquired a full tactical suit from a hunter who no longer needed it. The suit had armor plating, environmental controls, and a built-in communication system. She spent an hour learning its functions. Then she used the communication system to listen to Vektari channels. She heard them talking about her. They had given her a name, Velka Sheth. In their language, it meant shadow that takes. They were starting to fear her. Good. On the third day, she found other survivors hiding in a basement. 7 humans, starving and terrified. They looked at her with desperate hope. Can you help us? A young man asked. Can you get us out of here? Hannah studied their faces. They were not fighters. They were teachers and farmers and office workers. They would slow her down. They would make noise. They would get caught. She thought about walking away. It would be the smart choice. The tactical choice. Instead, she said, stay here. Don't move. Don't make noise. I will come back for you. She meant it. Somewhere in her cold heart, a small flame still burned. She had become a weapon to protect people. She had forgotten it somewhere along the way. These frightened faces reminded her. On the 4th day, word reached the jungle zone. Prisoners whispered to each other about a ghost in the city ruins. A woman who hunted the hunters. A shadow that killed without sound or mercy. Dahin heard these whispers and felt something strange. Hope. If one human could turn the tables, maybe others could too. Maybe survival was not the only option. On the 7th day, Commander Rokal himself reviewed the situation. 14 hunters dead or missing in the urban zone. 1 human in the jungle who had survived for over 20 days. This was supposed to be entertainment. This was supposed to be sport. This was becoming something else. Send the Bloodsworn to both zones, Rokal commanded. End this embarrassment. The Bloodsworn were the best hunters in the Vektari Dominion. 50 elite warriors trained from birth to track and kill. They had hunted creatures across 100 worlds. They had never known failure. They split into 2 groups. Half went to the jungle to find the survivor called Doyen. Half went to the city to find the shadow called Velk HFY in the urban ruins. Hannah watched them arrive through the scope of a stolen rifle. She counted 25 hunters. Elite armor. Advanced weapons. Professional movements. She smiled slightly. Finally, a real challenge. She melted into the shadows and began to prepare. The Bloodsworn thought they were the hunters. They would learn the truth soon enough. The Silent Reaper was done hiding. Now, she would hunt. 23 days. Kang Do-hyun had survived 23 days on a moon designed for death. He had done more than survive. He had built something in a hidden valley where mineral deposits blocked Vectari sensors. Do-hyun had gathered 11 survivors. They lived in caves, drank from underground streams, and ate plants that Do-hyun had tested for safety. It was not comfortable. It was not easy. But they were alive. So-young had become his second in command. The medic had skills that Do-hyun lacked. She could treat wounds, identify illnesses, and keep people healthy when food was scarce. Together, they had created a small community of hope in the middle of hell. The Bloods weren't coming, Junho said one morning. The young engineer had become their lookout, spending hours watching the jungle with stolen Vectari binoculars. I counted at least 20. They're moving in a search pattern toward our position. Do-hyun nodded calmly. He had expected this. The Vectari would not let him survive forever. They would send their best. We need to move, So-young said. Find another hiding place. No, Do-hyun shook his head. We've been hiding for too long. They'll find us eventually. We need a different plan. He looked at his small group of survivors. They were not soldiers. They were ordinary people who had learned to be quiet and careful. Could they do more? Could they fight? He was about to find out. Do-hyun split the group into 3 teams. He sent 2 teams to create diversions while he led the 3rd team toward a narrow canyon he had discovered weeks ago. The canyon was a natural trap. Steep walls. Only one way in or out. If the Bloodsworn followed them inside, they would be vulnerable. The plan worked better than expected. The diversions drew most of the Bloodsworn away from the main search area. 5 hunters followed Do-hyun's trail into the canyon. What happened next was not pretty. Do-hyun and his team used rocks, falling logs, and the terrain itself as weapons. They could not match the Vectari in direct combat, but they could drop boulders from above. They could collapse unstable slopes. They could turn the environment against their enemies. 3 Bloodsworn died in the canyon. 2 escaped. Badly wounded. It was the first time humans on Velkara had actively killed their hunters. News spread quickly. The prisoners in the compound heard whispers. The jungle survivor was fighting back. He had killed elite Bloodsworn warriors. The prey had become dangerous. Meanwhile, in the urban ruins, Yoon-hana was conducting her own war. The Bloodsworn hunting her were careful. They moved in tight formations. They checked every corner. They trusted no shadow. Hana respected their skill, but respect did not mean mercy. She attacked at night, using the darkness as her weapon. She set traps with wire and broken glass. She created distractions with thrown rocks and recorded sounds. While the Bloodsworn investigated one noise, she struck from another direction. In 1 week, she killed 8 Bloodsworn. She lost count of the regular hunters. The survivors she had promised to protect were still alive. She had moved them 3 times, always staying 1 step ahead of the search parties. They looked at her with a mixture of gratitude and fear. They had never seen anyone kill so efficiently. Who are you? One of them finally asked. What are you? Hana considered the question. I'm someone who made a lot of mistakes in her life. Someone who hurt people and told herself it was for the greater good. Someone who wanted to stop. She paused and looked at her hands. Hands that had taken so many lives. But I can't stop now. Not while they're hunting us. Not while there's still a chance. On day 28, Hana decided to expand her territory. The urban zone was becoming too dangerous. Too many hunters. Too many drones. She needed to move her survivors somewhere safer. She had heard about the jungle survivor through stolen communications. A man who had lived longer than anyone else. A man who was also fighting back. She decided to find him. Moving between zones was supposed to be impossible. The Vectari had checkpoints and barriers and constant patrols. Hannah moved through them like water through fingers. She found gaps in their security that they did not know existed. She led her 7 survivors through the night, silent as ghosts. They reached the jungle zone at dawn. Do-hyun's scouts spotted them first. Strangers moving through their territory. Potential enemies. They reported back immediately. Do-hyun grabbed a weapon and went to investigate. What he found was not what he expected. An older woman stood in the clearing, surrounded by exhausted survivors. She did not look dangerous, but something in her eyes made Do-hyun stop. Something cold and calculating. "You're the one they call Velkasheth," he said. It was not a question. "You're the one who killed 3 bloodsworn with rocks," Hannah replied. Impressive. Crude, but impressive. They studied each other. 2 very different people with one thing in common. They had refused to die. "Why did you come here?" Do-hyun asked. "Because we can't keep running forever. Because hiding isn't a solution. Because sooner or later, they'll find us all and kill us." Hannah stepped closer. "Unless we do something they never expect." "What's that?" "We attack them. We hit their command center. We take their ships." Do-hyun laughed, but there was no humor in it. "We're not soldiers. We're survivors. We can't assault a military base." "You're wrong." Hannah's voice was hard as steel. "You've been teaching your people to move without being seen, to use their environment, to think instead of panic. That's exactly what we need. We don't attack like soldiers. We attack like ghosts." Do-hyun thought about her words. He thought about his people, living in caves and eating roots. He thought about how long they could last. A month? 2 months? Eventually, the Vektari would find them. Eventually, they would all die, unless they changed the game. "I have maps," Do-hyun said slowly. "I've been studying their patrol routes, their schedules, their blind spots. I know this moon better than they do." Hannah smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just found a partner. "Then let's make a plan." They talked through the night. Do-hyun provided intelligence. Hannah provided tactics. Together, they saw possibilities that neither could see alone. By dawn, they had the beginning of a plan. The Vektari Central Compound sat at the heart of Velkara. It contained the command center, the prisoner processing facility, and most importantly, the landing pads where transport ships docked. If they could reach those ships, they could escape. They could send a message to human space. They could bring help. It was insane. It was desperate. It was their only chance. Do-hyun and Hannah looked at each other, 2 strangers united by circumstance. "We'll need more people," Do-hyun said. "More survivors from other zones." "Then we find them," Hannah replied. "We gather everyone we can. We train them. And we show these aliens what humans really are." Do-hyun extended his hand. Hannah took it. The hunt was about to be reversed. Day 35. 32 humans gathered in a hidden cave system beneath Velkara's southern mountains. They were farmers and engineers, doctors and teachers, young and old. None of them were soldiers. All of them were ready to fight. Do-hyun stood before them with a map drawn on the cave wall. "The central compound has 3 weak points," he said, pointing to each one. "Power station here. Communications tower here. Drone control center here. We hit all 3 at the same time." Hannah stepped forward. "We don't fight them directly. We don't have the weapons or training for that. Instead, we become invisible. We strike and disappear. We make them chase shadows while we complete our real objective." "Which is?" someone asked. "The transport ships," Do-hyun answered. "There are 4 ships on the landing pads. We only need one. One ship to escape. One ship to reach human space. One ship to tell the galaxy what happens here." The plan was complex. 3 strike teams would hit the weak points simultaneously. A 4th team, led by Do-hyun and Hana, would move toward the landing pads during the chaos. It would require perfect timing, complete silence, and more luck than any of them wanted to admit. They spent 3 days preparing. Hana taught them how to move without sound, how to strike fast and disappear, how to use their environment as a weapon. Do-hyun taught them the routes, the schedules, the blind spots he had memorized over weeks of observation. On the morning of day 38, they moved. The attack began at dawn. Jonho led the first strike team against the power station. They did not try to destroy it. They did not have explosives. Instead, they used stolen Victari tools to overload specific circuits. The lights in the compound flickered and died. Seconds later, Soyoung's team hit the communications tower. They cut cables and smashed relays. The Victari's long-range communications went silent. The 3rd team, led by a former construction worker named Bae In-soo, attacked the drone control center. They could not destroy the machines, but they could confuse them. In-soo had learned how to send false signals through the Victari network. Suddenly, drones were flying in circles, crashing into buildings, attacking each other. Chaos erupted in the compound. Commander Rokal stormed into the command center, screaming orders. Find the attackers. Kill them all. But there was no one to find. The strike teams had already vanished, melting back into the shadows like ghosts. The Victari sent hunters in every direction, chasing enemies that were already gone. In the confusion, Do-hyun and Hana led their team toward the landing pads. They moved through the compound like smoke. Do-hyun knew every corner, every hiding spot, every patrol route. Hana eliminated the few guards they could not avoid. Her movements were so fast, so silent, that her victims fell without knowing they were in danger. They reached the landing pads and found a problem. 2 Bloodsworn guards stood watch over the ships. Elite warriors. Too dangerous to fight, even for Hana. I'll distract them, Do-hyun said. That's suicide. Not if I'm smart about it. He handed Hana his weapon. Get our people to the ship. I'll catch up. Before she could argue, he stepped out of the shadows. The Bloodsworn spotted him immediately. They raised their weapons. Wait, Do-hyun said calmly. I challenge you. The guards hesitated. Among the Victari, challenges held ancient significance. Even Bloodsworn could not ignore them without losing honor. You? Challenge us? One guard laughed. You are prey. I am the one who killed your brothers in the canyon, Do-hyun replied. I am the one who has survived 38 days on your hunting moon. I challenge your overseer Thrall to single combat. The guards exchanged glances. This was unexpected. This was against all logic. But the challenge had been made. Honor demanded a response. One guard left to find Thrall. The other kept his weapon trained on Do-hyun behind them. Hana led the escape team to the nearest transport ship. Thrall arrived minutes later. His red-marked armor gleamed in the morning light. His eyes burned with hatred. You dare challenge me, human? I dare. Do-hyun's voice did not shake. Your rules. Your honor code. One fight. No weapons for me. Whatever weapon you choose. Thrall drew a long blade that curved like a crescent moon. When I kill you, I will hang your body at the compound entrance. A warning to all prey. If you kill me. The fight began. Do-hyun was not a warrior. He knew he could not win through strength or skill. But he had spent 38 days learning how the Victari moved. He knew their patterns, their weaknesses, their arrogance. Thrall attacked with savage speed. Do-hyun dodged. He did not try to counter. He did not try to fight back. He simply survived. He let Thrall chase him across the landing pad, always staying one step ahead. The overseer grew frustrated. His attacks became wilder, less controlled. Stand still and die like proper prey. Thrall screamed. Do-hyun said nothing. He kept moving, waiting, watching Dot behind them. The transport ship's engines roared to life. Thrall turned at the sound. That moment of distraction was all Do-hyun needed. He had positioned himself near a stack of fuel containers. Now he kicked the nearest container into Thrall's path. The overseer stumbled. Do-hyun grabbed a loose support beam and swung with all his strength. The metal connected with Thrall's knee. Bone cracked. The Vektari fell. Do-hyun did not hesitate. He ran. The transport ship was rising from the pad. Hannah stood at the open door, reaching out. Jump! Do-hyun jumped. Hannah caught his arm and pulled him inside. The door closed behind them. Below, Thrall screamed in rage. But the ship was already climbing into the sky. In the command center, Commander Rokal watched in disbelief. Shoot them down. Destroy that ship. But the communications were still damaged. The weapon systems were offline. The chaos the humans had created was still spreading through the compound. The transport ship broke atmosphere and entered the darkness of space. Do-hyun found the communication controls. His hand shook as he activated the long-range transmitter. He began to broadcast. This message is for anyone who can hear. My name is Kang Do-hyun. I am a survivor of the Vektari hunting moon called Velkara. For years, they have been capturing humans, using us as prey, hunting us for sport. I am sending coordinates. I am sending evidence. The galaxy needs to know what happens here. The message repeated on every frequency. It spread across the stars like wildfire. Within hours, human military ships began converging on Velkara. Within days, the hunting moon was shut down. The prisoners were freed. The Vektari faced consequences they had never imagined. Do-hyun did not call himself a hero. He returned to emergency response work, helping people in crisis just as he always had. But sometimes, late at night, Hannah would visit. They would sit together in comfortable silence, two survivors who understood what it meant to endure. The Vektari had called humans weak, fragile, easy prey. They had learned the truth. Humans were not dangerous because of strength or speed or weapons. Humans were dangerous because they endured. They adapted. They waited. They thought. And when pushed far enough, they stopped being prey. They became the hunters. The story of Velkara spread across the galaxy. It became a warning to any species that might consider humans easy targets. Hunt a human, and you might succeed, but push them too far, and the Silent Reaper awakens, and she brings friends.